Shalom Aleichem, Boker Tov, Boker Tov. It's after Shabbat. It is the day after Shabbat. It is Sunday, and I'd like to finish Lecha and post something on finish the seventh reading, so you guys can have with Rashi on my channel. Okay. So here we begin. I believe we left off on the sixth reading, and that was yesterday. So the seventh reading begins Lecha, chapter 17, verse 7, seventh reading. Torah says, I will also maintain another aspect of my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you throughout their generations, as an everlasting covenant, to be God both to you and to your descendants after you. So let's see what Rashi says for verse 7. I'll maintain my covenant. And what is this covenant? To be God to you. All right. Let's see. Verse 8, Torah. I will give the land in which you are sojourning, the entire land of Canaan, as an everlasting heritage to you and to your descendants after you. And I will be God unto them. Okay, what does Rashi say for verse 8? Rashi says, as an everlasting heritage, and there I will be God unto them. But whoever lives outside the land of Israel is considered as if he has no God. All right, verse 9. Torah says, God further said to Abraham, as for you, you keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you, throughout their generations. What does Rashi say for verse 9? As for you, this connects this verse to the previous subject. As for me, here is my covenant with you, and you, for your part, be careful to keep it. And what constitutes keeping it? This is my covenant, for you to keep, to circumcise every male among you. All right, verse 10. Torah, this is my covenant between me and you, all the current members of your household and your descendants after you, for you to keep, to circumcise every male among you. What does Rashi say for verse 10? Between me and you, Rashi says, those who are now alive and your descendants after you, who are to be born in the future, to be circumcised. This word is like in the same way. Okay, so I don't understand that one. Torah says, verse 11, you must circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and this will be a covenantal sign between me and you. Rashi says for verse 11, you must circumcise. This is the equivalent of... Okay, so this is another grammatical commentary, so I'm going to skip that one. So verse 12, Torah, throughout your generations, every male among you must be circumcised when he is 8 days old, including every male born of a non-Jewish bondwoman, whether he was conceived when she was already owned by your household, or whether he was bought for money along with his non-Jewish mother, when she was pregnant with him, from a stranger who is not one of your descendants. All right, Rashi says for verse 12, born of your household, a child to whom the bondwoman gave birth in your house, or bought for money, whom you bought after he was born. Torah says, verse 13, where's 13? Where is 13? I cannot find. Here we go. 13 is right here. In contrast, any male born in your household of a non-Jewish woman who was purchased not as a bondwoman herself, but only with the understanding that her offspring be bondservants, and any non-Jewish male bought with your money as a bondman after he was born must be circumcised immediately upon purchase, even if he is older or younger than 8 days old. My covenant will thus be in your flesh as an everlasting covenant. Rashi says for verse 13, any male child born in your household must be circumcised. Here it repeats this command, but does not say 8 days old, as in the previous verse. This is to teach you that some cases of those born in your household are circumcised even after 8 days, as explained in Tractate Shabbat in the Gemara and the Talmud. Torah says, verse 14, an uncircumcised male who does not circumcise his foreskin, that soul will be cut off from his people, for he has breached my covenant. Rashi says, for verse 14, an uncircumcised male, here, by the repetition of male, it teaches us that circumcision is performed on that place where there is a distinction between male and female. Rashi says, again for verse 14, who does not circumcise? When he reaches the age liable for punishment, will be cut off. His father, however, is not punished with being cut off for not circumcising his son, but he does transgress an active commandment. That soul will be cut off. He will be childless and die prematurely. Torah says, verse 15, God said to Abraham regarding Sarai, your wife, you must not call her any more by the name Sarai, meaning my princess, for Sarah, meaning princess in general, is her name. Rashi says, verse 15, you must not call her by the name Sarai, which implies my princess, a princess only to me and not to others. For her name is now Sarah, a princess in unqualified terms, signifying that she will be a princess over everyone. Torah says, verse 16, I will bless her and will also give you a son from her. I will also bless her with abundant lactation. She will give rise to nations. Kings of peoples will issue from her. Rashi says, verse 16, I will bless her. And what was the blessing? That she regained her youthfulness, and as it says, now that I am withered, will my skin become smooth? I will also bless her with the ability to breastfeed. This refers particularly to when she needed it on the day of the feast of Isaac, for people were speaking rumors about them, saying that they had brought in a foundling from the street and said, this is our son. So every mother who came to the feast brought her child with her, but did not bring her wet nurse. And Sarah nursed all of them. This is what is referred to when it says Sarah will nurse children. This is partially alluded to in Bereshit Rabbah. Torah says, verse 17, Abraham threw himself on his face and laughed in joy, saying to himself, were it not for God, would a child be born to 100-year-old man? Would Sarah at 90 give birth? 17, Rashi says for verse 17, Abraham threw himself upon his face and laughed. This word, Unclos translates as an expression of joy, whereas the similar verb used concerning Sarah, he translates as an expression of derisive laughter. From this you learn that Abraham believed the prophecy and was happy, but Sarah did not believe it and mocked it. That is why the Holy One, blessed be He, censured Sarah for laughing, censured Sarah for laughing, but not Abraham. Would to 100-year-old man, okay. There are expressions of astonishment with demonstration. There are expressions of astonishment which demonstrate affirmation and not doubt, like, did I reveal myself? And do you see? This question, too, is an affirmation, and this is, in effect, is what he said to himself. Has this kindness which the Holy One, blessed be He, is doing for me been done for another of my age? Would Sarah at 90 be worthy of giving birth? Although earlier generations gave birth at an age of 500, by Abraham's time the usual lifespan had already become shorter and weakness had come to the world. This you can learn from the 10 generations from Noach to Abraham, who gave birth at the relatively early ages of 30 and 70. Verse 18, Torah says, Abraham said to God, if only Ishmael would live in awe of you and be worthy to succeed me. Verse 18, Rashi says, this means, if only Ishmael would live, for I am unworthy of receiving such a reward of having another son. This means, would live in awe of you. This is a similar expression, which Onkelos translates as serve before me. Verse 19, Torah. God said, still, Sarah, your wife, will indeed bear you a son, and you must name him Isaac. Yitzchak means will laugh. I will maintain my covenant only with Isaac, as an everlasting covenant, for his descendants after him. Verse 19, Rashi. Still, this word connotes confirmation of a statement. Similar to this is, we are indeed guilty, and the fact is, she has no son. And you must name him Isaac on account of the laughter. Some say that alludes to the numerical values of the letters of the name. The 10 trials, the 90 years of Sarah, and the 8 days after birth when Isaac was circumcised, and the 100 years of Abraham. I will maintain my covenant. Why is this mentioned? It is already written, as for you, you keep my covenant, you and your descendants. However, since it says, I will maintain my covenant between me and you and your descendants, I might have thought that the descendants of Ishmael and of Keturah, also descendants of Abraham, are included in the promise of maintaining. Also the descendants of Abraham are included in the promise of maintaining the covenant. Scripture therefore says here, I will maintain my covenant with him, and not with others. Why then does it say again, but I will maintain my covenant with Isaac? It is only to teach us that he was holy from birth. Another explanation of the later repetition, Rabbi Abba said, from here one learns a logical conclusion regarding the mistress' son, Isaac. From the bondwoman's son, Ishmael, it is written, I have blessed him and will make him fruitful and numerous, referring to Ishmael. And all the more so, I will maintain my covenant with Isaac. My covenant, the covenant of circumcision, will be transmitted only to the descendants of Isaac. Torah says, verse 20, regarding Ishmael, I have heard you. I have blessed him, and I will make him fruitful and extremely numerous. He will father 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. But I will maintain my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you as this time next year. 20, 12 princes. They will vanish like the clouds. This is deduced from the fact that the word used here for princes is the same as in clouds and wind. Torah says, verse 22, when he had finished speaking with him, God's presence ascended from resting above Abraham. Rashi says, verse 22, from above Abraham. This is more fitting expression to use about the divine presence. And we also learn from here that righteous people are the chariots of the omnipresent. Torah says, verse 23, Abraham then took Ishmael his son, and all those born in his household, and all those he had bought for money, that is, every male among the people of Abraham's household, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskins on the very same day on which God gave him the commandment, as God had spoken with him. Verse 23, on the same day as he was commanded, and in the day time and not at night, for he was not afraid of the pagans or of the scoffers, and also so that his enemies and his contemporaries not say, if we would have seen him, we would have not allowed him to circumcise himself and to fulfill the commandment of the omnipresent. And he circumcised. This is a cow, simply active form. 24. Maftir. Abraham was 99 years old when the flesh of his foreskin was circumcised. What does Rashi say for 24? When was circumcised? This is a nifal, passive form. When they were created, Abraham took a knife and held his foreskin. He wished to cut it, but was afraid to do so, since he was old. What did the Holy One, blessed be he, do? He figuratively stretched out his hand and held it with him. As it says, he cut with him the covenant. It does not say for him, but rather with him. Bereshit Rabbah. Torah says 25, verse 25, Ishmael, his son, was only 13 years old when the flesh of his foreskin was circumcised. On that very day Abraham was circumcised, along with Ishmael his son, and all the men of his household, whether homeborn or bought for money from a stranger, were circumcised with him. Rashi says for 25 and 26, when the flesh of his foreskin was circumcised. Regarding the circumcision of Abraham, it does not say the word et, because he lacked only the cutting of the foreskin, which had already been worn down through marital relationships, whereas Ishmael, who was a child, required cutting of the foreskin and also opening of the corona membrane. It therefore says concerning him, Bereshit Rabbah. On that very day, Rashi says, verse 26, that Abraham completed his 99th year and Ishmael his 13th year. Abraham was circumcised along with Ishmael his son. And end of Parshat Lecha. And that is Torah with Rashi. Lecha with Rashi. And I will read Daily Wisdom for Lecha from the Lubavitcher Rebbe for the seventh reading. Seventh reading, Genesis 17, chapter 17, verse 7 through 27. Despite God's promise, Abram and Sarai had not yet had children. Sarai, therefore, had her Egyptian bondwoman Hagar bear a child by Abram, named Ishmael. 13 years later, God told Abram that it was time for him to have a son with Sarai, and in preparation, he was going to change their names to Abraham and Sarah. The title of this daily wisdom, Torah wisdom from the Lubavitcher Rebbe is called The Foundation of Jewish Education. Abraham said to God, "If only Ishmael would live in awe of you." Genesis, Bereshit, chapter 17, verse 18. Ishmael was born under natural circumstances, whereas Isaac's birth was miraculous. Furthermore, Ishmael was circumcised at an age at which he could comprehend the significance of the act, whereas Isaac, was circumcised as an infant, before his mind could grasp its importance. Ishmael's birth and development followed a natural and logical order. His connection to God hinged on his own understanding. In contrast, Isaac's birth, Yitzchak's birth, and development reflect the fact that his bond to God was immutable, transcending nature and reason. God therefore told Abraham and Isaac, not Ishmael, would be the forebearer. God told Abraham that Isaac, not Ishmael, would be the forebearer of the Jewish people. Isaac's early life encapsulates the unique and eternal bond between God and the Jewish people. Isaac's birth and upbringing serve as the model for Jewish education. A Jewish child should be raised from birth to live a godly spiritual life. We must not wait idly for the children to grow up, hoping that they develop a commitment to Judaism on their own. As Isaac's life teaches us, the Jewish people's connection to God is entirely supernatural and not bound by the limitations of human intellect. And that is the Lubavitcher Rebbe's wisdom for Torah, Lech Lecha. All right, have a wonderful morning.